So welcome to Business Fundamentals for Startups and New Businesses, week number 2. So we're going to jump around a little bit. The next on the docket, as per our business plan outline, is business objectives. We're going to leave that till next week, just because I want to get to getting to talk about our market description a little bit more and the competition. We're only going to cover the competition tonight and what your consumer market looks like based on research. Anything that's in module 3 and the target market and the PEST analysis we'll be discussing next week in week 3. So why are we researching things? We have to back the bus up a little bit and determine what it is you're looking for. We are looking effectively for the who's, the what's, the where's, the when's, the how's, and the why's of what you are doing your business for. So you might have a vague idea, and I do hear this a lot. I have a wonderful business idea. I know there's people out there that need me. Great. But what people are going to see is we need to see the proof in the pudding. We need to see all the validation of this great business opportunity that you have. We need to see the objective proof as to where those consumers reside. So you need to figure out 2 who's. Are you going to be serving businesses? Are you going to be serving customers? Business to business is a little bit different than the business to consumer. When you're selling business to consumer, you're selling to the final consumer for household consumption. When you're selling business to business, you're usually selling it to the business for multiple people, usually larger number contracts for larger periods of time. But they, just like Jackie acknowledged earlier, will need a different approach and a different demographic profile created on how you address them and how you communicate with them. They might need to be educated differently than the final consumer, for example. Okay. There are major key players in those business to business decisions. Usually there will be stakeholders like gatekeepers that we refer to. These are the clerical support and the reception areas. You got to win these people over if you're doing business to business, not just the consumer. You need to do research on what will make your business different. This is why we do a competitive analysis. I had a catering business. I know there's other fabulous chefs in the community. I appreciate and understand there's wonderful restaurants, my sister being one of them. I do understand there's competition that goes around. However, I do appreciate that there is one unique thing that you can bring to the table in each one of your businesses that your competition doesn't do. One way to do that is to keep your friends close, but your enemies closer. What are the strengths that business has? Celebrate those strengths, but what are their weaknesses? Those weaknesses will pull out a value proposition for your business. I had a client once that didn't know where her pricing strategy was in comparison to the competition. A simple task of looking online and verifying websites on her own. This is primary research. This is the research that you come up with on your own, really revealed something about it. Jackie, I was saying, hey, stay tuned. I have a story to share with you. I had one particular client, I wasn't expecting this at all, that said, she said, she was specifically focusing on her marketing strategy. And she said, I don't know where my customers are. I don't know how I can communicate with them. I don't know if they're on Facebook. I don't know if I should be doing a newspaper ad. I don't know. So I said to her, well, what does your customer look like? And she goes, well, my customer looks like this. I said, what I'd like you to do is talk to your customers a little bit more. Ask them a little bit more about what makes them who they are and what makes them tick and how they purchase the way they do, how they make those decisions. She spent some time answering some demographic questions, which I actually gave you guys last week in worksheet number 1, all those questions about what their education was, what their age levels were, blah, blah, blah. I gave her that exact same task with the initiative of what research would provide for her. And she came up with a whole new customer demographic. She said, oh my gosh, I have not been targeting my customer. I thought my customer looked like this, but in fact, they look like this. I am going to renovate my whole website. I am not addressing the customer I'd like to. I appreciate this is where I'm not maximizing my dollars. And it was that simple task that you guys did last week that made her develop that customer profile. So you want to do some research about what they look like, where do they reside, when are they purchasing, why are they purchasing, are they purchasing? In the 1940s, the big New York marketing ad agencies used to target to men. And then they realized that the men weren't the ones making the purchase decisions in the house, and they needed to tweak their advertising initiatives and start targeting women because it was the wife of the house that was effectively making the purchase decisions. And they were successful as a result of doing that market research to know and appreciate at that time who they were actually talking to in their marketing messages. It wasn't the husband, it was actually the wife in the family. Your customers are all going to look different, and they will all reside in different areas. Some are going to look industrial, some are going to be final consumer. How are you going to address them? We're going to find out by the end of the week. So research is a vital aspect of determining whether or not you have a viable business. I love the question, do you have it? Yes, but we need proof. You will have to do financial projections at some point. And guys, it's going to feel like a farce. You're just throwing something at a wall, hoping it's going to stick. Well, yeah, that is true to a certain extent. But upon market research, we're going to see objective proof. This many households will use this. There's this many households in Sarnia and Lambton County. It means that we will make this much money. So you can appreciate now where this information feeds into your overall business plan. And this is where I stress too, this is a living, breathing document. Upon your research, you're saying, okay, year one, month one, I'm going to make this much money based on this data, this statistical analysis, this data. So you look at your actuals. Did I hit those benchmarks? What are my plans for year two? Do I want to get 10% more? So what does 10% more of that look like? Year two, you reevaluate. Did I hit this goal? So you can appreciate where the research is. Marketing. My customer profile looks like this. Guys, the environment doesn't stay static. It's constantly changing. Okay, so as your consumer's changing, where are the trends of them changing? Is it their economic status? Is it their consumption patterns? These are the kind of research that we're going to be looking at a little bit more. If it's viable, how does the business have to be positioned in the competition? Again, there's more than enough to go around, and you can still see a lot of that market share. Don't be scared of the competition. And guys, too, another story on the side note, don't be afraid to help out the competition either. I was in a cooking competition once with many different competitors in the Sarnia-Lambton area. We actually all helped each other out win that competition, even though we were vying for the same title. Don't be ashamed if you get too overwhelmed and busy to say, hey, I know this person, and start feeding business that way. That's how my catering business actually started. Take care of each other in the network. I know there's competition out there, but it helps to take care of each other too, because Sarnia-Lambton is small and the community does talk to each other. It also will lead to other networking opportunities as well. So just be aware the competition's there. Never knock them though. Just show how you deliver something that's exceptionally above the rest. I always tell my selling students, don't talk about them. Yeah, they might be failing somewhere. Just talk about yourself and how you, as a business, are going to solve that problem for your customer. And social media is rampant with people that are willing to complain about the business. So that's primary research too. Watching social media, watching the comment section, seeing where they're going. It's as simple as that. It doesn't have to be crunching numbers. Common mistake made by small business organizations is failure to do any adequate research before startup. I have another funny marketing story. In the continent of Africa, there is poor literacy skills. And Gerber Baby Food did not do their research before expanding into Africa. With poor literacy skills, people in that country really rely on pictures on labels to indicate what the contents of the jars are. Gerber did not do their research. We've all seen the Gerber Baby logo, which is very cute. Not so successful in Africa, people. You can only imagine this is a true marketing story, They did not do their research. They failed going to that country because people actually thought the contents were babies. So as much as we love and appreciate that logo, there's people in the world that do not. But on a side note, from a marketing perspective, this is why we have Johnny Walker Black and Johnny Walker Red, Johnny Walker Green, because once upon a time, people had poor literacy levels, but they recognized the scotch they liked by the color of the brand. You don't know this information, guys, until you start asking the questions. Secondary research from Stats Canada will only give you so much. Get to know your customer intimately. All right. It does cost time and energy and money. It does seem like a big task and assignment, but it is a function that you cannot afford not to do.
The world is changing at a very high pace. Consumption is deeply evolving. New profiles of consumers appear every day, inventing new behaviors and new values. To keep up with this process of customer evolution, brands need to be reactive, develop strong connections, have emotional relationships with consumers and business decision makers to engage them. This is where we come to the rescue of these brands to perform the litmus test and determine whether a particular product, service, concept will satisfy the needs of your customers. With effective market research, your company can gain invaluable insights about the economic shifts, demographics of your target market, insights about your competitors, the current market trends, and the spending traits of your customers. Data is the fundamental block for any market research project. Good quality data can help a business determine its target customers, which helps companies spending in marketing with maximum effectiveness. How do you ask? It can give you insights regarding the evolution of your target market and how you have to evolve with them. It can also give you insights about your lineation with the correct target market. In this competitive world where survival of the fittest is the mantra, market research plays a crucial role for any company as it helps in improving efficiency, spur innovation, identify problems in your brand, and growing your brand. So come be a part of the future with seminal research.
So the main question is your business able to fulfill the needs of your target audience? And these are the questions that you answered just kind of casually. And this isn't a hard and fast profile you guys are creating now. Please be prepared that this might evolve and change as the time goes on. Why is research necessary? It will lower your risk factor. So it will identify areas where you have to be concerned of serious business decisions. If the research validates that decision, then it's a very confident investment for that business owner, and the owner should get a green light to move ahead. If there is an indication of a lack of data, then this is indicative of a risk not worth taking. It's a great way to objectively see whether or not it meets all the factors or not. Do not ignore the numbers. Your data is objective proof. If the numbers aren't there, then you should probably either reevaluate your business model or reevaluate your business. But don't risk investment if the numbers and the data do not reflect that. Products and services can be positioned better in the marketplace with research, which in turn increases sales and profits. This is one of the most common reasons for market research and a great way for a business to identify areas of success for the business. And I do have another story for you. I don't think any of you would be unfamiliar with Play-Doh. Everyone knows what Play-Doh is? Did everyone consume Play-Doh once upon a time? Don't answer that question. I'm sure we all did at some point. Anyways, Play-Doh was initially invented to remove soot from the houses. So Play-Doh was invented so you could take the charcoal and all the carbon that was inside the house and you would dab it on your walls to remove it. Well, Once upon a time, households then went to electric and hot water heat. What happened to Play-Doh? Don't need it anymore. But one thing that the inventor noted was his nephew kept playing with it when he was using it. Added some color to it. Now we have a toy that has been in the maturity stage, if you're familiar with the product life cycle, for the majority of our childhoods and our parents' childhoods and our grandparents' childhoods, for example. And it took that market research, and primary research can be as simple as just observation, guys. I used to have, I was a Lambton College student. I used to have a teacher, an economics teacher that used to say, if you want statistics and objective data, stand underneath the Blue Water Bridge. If you want to see how importing and exporting is, see how many freight trains are crossing over. And you just sit there and count the trucks. It can be just as simple as that. It does not have to be a hard task. Rebrand, yeah, and that's a great opportunity to rebrand. I think I shared that story with Philadelphia Cream Cheese last week upon their market research, right? Obviously, we're going to talk about the PEST analysis and external environmental dynamics next week, but doing research would be better able for you to respond. Even reactively, guys, a lot of businesses during the pandemic found their doors shut, and what do I do next? Well, putting your head in the sand, regardless of what the government's telling you to do, does not help your business operate and help keep your consumers happy, or reminding your consumers that we're still here and we're going to be available when we open. But market research helped those businesses pivot, and those who did it brilliantly actually still had staying power after. Some of them haven't even gone back to their original business models from before the pandemic. And it took research and investigating, knowing where trends are, and watching what they did back then to set a precedence of what you do in the future. All right, again, watch the news. If there is something that's a lawsuit, for example, that's impacting your business dynamic from outside, be cognizant of the inside of your business and be able to respond and react to it. Always do research. You will notice that next thing you know, you're going to be looking at commercial locations every time you drive by certain areas of the city, for example. You're always going to be thinking your brain's never going to be shut off. Congratulations, you've welcomed yourself into entrepreneurship. Your brain will never shut off, but you will learn that work-life balance at some point. Believe me. Better relations with your customers and customer management. You can get more familiar with who your target audience is and what products and services they're using, and offer more customer-centric questions that helps understand your customer better. It allows for opportunities of business growth and strategic organizational decision-making. It facilitates opportunities and a reason to measure business success, which is why I keep saying to you, and I'm going to sound like a broken record, this document is going to be living and breathing. You're going to be constantly revisiting it. And it can measure brand reputation. Did this marketing message present the way we had wanted it to? If not, what can we change for the better? Gerber Foods, for example, learned that really fast when they went into Africa the next time. And I do have other stories like that that I share with my students. So how do you conduct market research? Well, you start with, what do you want to know and why? Have clear design goals to design good research. And keep asking rabbit hole questions that probe more and more and more. Number two, how are you going to gather your data? Define what research methods you're going to use. Again, start with that secondary research, and I will go to some good sites locally and externally that will facilitate some of that secondary research. And then you go to the primary research next. And I'll describe that in a little bit deeper. It all depends on the goals you're hoping to achieve here. And who will conduct the research? Are you going to do it yourself? Are you going to outsource that? Please know that if you outsource it, it might come at a cost. Maybe you want to do a combination to get different perspectives, different samples of a population, for example. But it'll also give you a little bit more communication of what your customer looks like. So know your audience and make sure you have one. Is your business idea original? You need to do some research. and see if the trademark is available and the trade name is still available, that there's no patents or industrial designs about the products that you're offering or manufacturing that can be copied. And if you are, then you've obtained the appropriate licenses. Can it be produced or distributed? If it can, then protect it immediately. There is a really good documentary on, I think it's on Prime right now, if you want some nerdy business movies. This was really cute, and it was about PEST dispensers. Has anyone seen it yet? It's pretty cool. It's on Prime right now, and PES, basically what happened was I think they're originally based out of Austria, and they had certain designs. So basically the main headquarters in Austria would distribute to other international distribution centers, except the US. The US wanted to control their own market. So they said, no, we're not going to use your designs. We're going to use the PES brand name, and we're going to distribute our own at the end. Well, they realized one of these PES fanatics, who was a huge fan, went to Europe and then brought thousands and thousands of these PES that the Americans had rejected and started selling it as novelties at premium prices, pissing off PES. It's a great story, guys, but they could not stop it at customs. Why? Because there was no protected trademark for that device. So if you are working on something, and if it's novel and unique, make sure that you register it. Yes, it costs a lot of money to register, and there is an annual maintenance fee. We'll talk about it more week 7. Patents are 20 years protection. Industrial designs are 10. Copyrights are usually 50 years after the death of the originator of that copyright, unless it's registered, and trademark has different particulars associated with that as well. But protect your own content, protect your own property, and make sure that it is available. Moe's Bar in Sarnia was discovered by The Simpsons, which is why they could not call it Moe's Bar again. So intellectual property, a very particular thing. Okay, know the trademark. Make sure that the website too, guys. Make sure that the web domain is available as well. Web domains do fall under trademark legislation as well. Okay, so do a simple search. You can just sit on your laptop and do that. These are the kind of research that you want to do. Understand the competition. We'll talk a little bit about that today, and marketing to your customer, which we'll discuss in market module 4 in 2 weeks with Martin Vrolik. Same with the positioning, and we'll talk about managing risk from a business perspective. Or you know what? You could just have a toddler go nuts and see where your risks on your business lie after that. Just joking, I would not suggest that. So where can you go for information? Now, there is a difference between primary and secondary sources. There's a YouTube video link on this slide. I'm not going to access that link right now. You can do that on your own time. Basically, what the difference between the two: secondary data is published by somebody else. It's provided by another source. It could be a published report that somebody did, like a PhD that did a research on that, or a study. It could be Statistics Canada. Another place to get really good secondary data in Sarnia-Lambton is Sarnia-Lambton Workplace Development. They do a lot of statistical analysis and data for our local area. The city of Sarnia might have some research as well. Sometimes when there is a program going on, they do have the market research to support that. So there is opportunities for secondary research and secondary data, not only from a national perspective from Statistics Canada, but from local areas like the County of Lambton, the City of Sarnia, and Sarnia Workplace Development. Now, primary data is any research that you have done on your own or on behalf of the business. So this is data that comes from you. It could be simply observation to see how monitoring the market, like customer habits, for example. If you want to see how many people eat hamburgers, you can sit in the mall food court and see how many people order hamburgers from A&W and assume that's a sample population. That is primary data. It could be surveys. We do encourage you as part of this program to do a survey. It doesn't have to be a mail, telephone, or a survey. What we want you to do is do a primary research analysis on customers or businesses, depending on who your profile looks like. And you will provide that market research statistical analysis from both a secondary and a primary perspective. We're going to want to see how that information supports into your financial profits, for example. We're going to want to see the sample survey as well. That will appear in your appendices. Before I move on, we have a cute example of what a focus group is. I love focus groups because usually it's really interesting to see how their true perspectives are, and you're going to get some insight as to what that's all about here.
Can a truck make you more handsome, more dependable, more rugged? We came here to find out. We talked to real people, not actors. Including kids, mature people, young single women, rich housewives, guys with beards.
Hello, thank you for coming.
We showed them 2 pictures of the same guy in the same location. The only difference, the vehicle behind him.
Which guy is more handsome?
Left. Guy with the truck.
He just looks, you know, more bam.
Which man is sexier?
Truck, yeah.
Which one of these 2 guys would you rather have date your daughter?
This guy is definitely the guy your mom wants you to marry, and this is the guy you're going to run off to and leave him to be with him.
That truck is going to protect my little girl, and I'm always concerned about getting her home safe.
Show me how a truck guy would shake my hand. Oh.
The guy with the truck would definitely have like a German Shepherd dog. I mean, come on. Like a tarantula, a rattlesnake.
What kind of pet would this guy have?
Maybe like some birds.
If this guy could grow facial hair, what would he grow?
Just a soul patch.
The truck guy.
Mutton chops.
In a zombie apocalypse.
The truck? What's the matter with you?
Which one is cooler?
He's driving a 4-door truck. That says it all. He's living and he's existing.
He's like, yeah, I'm cruising and I'm gonna go to the beach now. And this guy's like, yeah, I'm gonna go home and watch TV.
I'm not sure of the definition of cool, but if it means doing what he wants, when he wants, the guy with the truck.
After 12 groups in 2 days, we learned that truck guys are 85% more handsome,
That one right there has way more sex appeal.
76% more resourceful,
I'm gonna call him. You're in a jam, call the truck.
and 100% more likely to have an awesome pet.
Timberwolf Husky.
Clearly, people feel strongly about truck guys.
It is the guy.
Hi, I'm Scott, and this is the all-new 2015 Chevy Colorado.
With built-in 4G LTE Wi-Fi, best-in-class V6 fuel economy,
It feels like a car.
advanced safety features,
It's wonderful.
and a flexible cargo bed.
You guys want to check out the bed?
You know you want a truck. The all-new Chevy Colorado.
So you get an idea of how that data kind of feeds in and why you want to do particular market research. It's a humorous way to see how focus groups are created, but you can go about your own doing this as well and make it. Chevy took it and took that data and made a humorous commercial out of it. So I know students really like when we talk about that focus group commercial, when we talk about customer profile. And you can see from that research, they developed a customer profile from those particular questions, as amusing as they were. So it can be a fun task doing research, believe it or not. I don't know if you believe me, but maybe by the end of this you will. Market research will determine who your audience is and where they are and how to sell to them. It will reveal also the best platforms to advertise to your audience, and Martin Brolick will highlight on that in session 4. So is there even a market for your product or service? Where is that market located? What is your demographic? You worked on that in your worksheet in Module 1. And do you know what kind of people who will want to buy your products and services? If this is the business to business, this will look different from business to business, and you should treat your profiles differently. Is the market concentrated or is it more dispersed over a larger geographical area? That would consider logistic requirements to getting your product or service to the customer. And could the size of the market change suddenly? You discussed on creating a profile for your business, and you looked at and answered questions that fulfilled characteristics of the customers who are most likely to purchase your product or service. Then you would explain whether your target market is industrial market, business to business and selling to other businesses, or the consumer market, business to consumer. You want to sell to general public. Emma's business, for example, Save the Date, might sell business to other businesses with other floral arrangements, but it will go towards business to consumer if she has final bride. So you can see where different profiles would be required in this particular situation. If it is the industrial market, you want to establish what the type of the business is. If it's a manufacturing business, is it a service business? For example, what is the size of the market? What is the product application being used? What is their frequency of purchases or size or typical orders, and the decision maker? For example, and I use this as an example sometimes, think of if you were selling toilet paper to the Coast Guard. There is lots of locations, cheers, Jen. There's lots of locations that are available that require toilet paper for Coast Guard offices, if you think of how many there is. So you can appreciate the frequency and the size of business to business tend to be more frequent, and they are usually larger. They also require a different decision maker. Remember, somebody is thinking about how they are going to turn around and sell your good and service to their final consumer or to another business. So that decision maker is going to be thinking on behalf of somebody else, and you have to take that into consideration. The consumer market is when you sell to the final consumer, and it's really important you started answering questions about what their age looked like, what their income looked like, what was their family size, education, lifestyle, frequency of purchase, decision maker. Mountain Equipment Co-op did some research once, and they wanted to know who was buying their winter parkas, and they established through their market research that 80% of the people that were buying their parkas owned a dog. So it made sense when they did their commercial that they showed a dog walker, because that was a reason why people were purchasing that particular parka, because they were walking a dog. It was beyond just what their education, their occupation, or just warmth was. It was for the purpose of walking the dog. And you can do a lot with that information once you start investigating it a little bit more. With your research, you want to be able to explain why your target market buys the product and service you will sell, and explain what needs are being fulfilled by that product and service. And the stakeholders reading your business plan will want to see, does this research, does this target market data correlate with what you're saying in your marketing strategy? Does it also correlate with what you're saying that are achievable clients served or dollars spent and served in that research? List major criteria your customer will be using in deciding on their research process when they're making their decisions. For example, if you're buying a pack of gum, which is a convenience item, there's very limited consumer research that a person will do in their brain. They usually go to the gum they like, or they spend very little time because they're not expending a lot of dollars. There's not a lot of consumption if that product does not work out in the manner that they hope. Think of anti-wrinkle creams. I know I am. I don't know how much money I spend on them. They still don't deliver what I want, but I still keep spending money on them. So this is the kind of information that you're looking for, and how the purpose that they are for purchasing it. You want to consider delivery time, the level of customer service, credit terms, reputation as well, and conclude with an actual number of potential customers in the market, which your worksheet number 2, if you had a chance to look at it, there's information on here regarding advantages and disadvantages of different research, but there also is an evaluation of a business opportunity, and it gives you an idea of a calculator on how you can see how many households served, how many families served, how many of your consumers reside in a particular area. So when you're developing a market survey, it's really important that you develop this. You have to do it for this particular business plan as well. Develop questions. They could be yes or no questions. They can be numerical questions. That's effectively up to you.
I'm Dr. Nick, and I'm going to talk about the questions you ask in a questionnaire or survey. This video follows on from another video designing a questionnaire. These ideas are also useful for critiquing a questionnaire or survey. It is very important that the questions in a questionnaire are well written to find out what you want to know and to avoid bias or non-sampling error. There are different types of questions. Open questions let the respondent say what they like, while closed questions give respondents a choice of response. Open questions are useful when you do not know how people are likely to respond, or when you want to avoid influencing their response. But open questions can be very difficult to analyse, as there are so many different ways that they can be answered. You might think that it is easy to ask good questions in a questionnaire, but it isn't. You want to make it as easy as possible for the respondent to give you the information you want. To start with, the questions should be as short as possible. Questions need to have correct spelling and grammar. Questions should use language appropriate to the subject and the people you are asking. If you are asking experts, you can use technical language, but generally you need to keep the language simple. It is usually better to ask what a person did in a certain instance or over a certain period of time than for them to recall in general what happens. But you need to be realistic about what you can expect people to remember. And you need to define your terms. It is important to have just one idea in a question. If there are two ideas, use two questions. It is better to ask questions in positive terms if possible. Avoid a double negative, as that can be very confusing. In closed questions, you need to be careful about the alternatives you provide. You need to make it clear whether the person is supposed to choose one alternative or as many as they wish. And you need to make sure that the alternative choices do not overlap, and that they cover the whole range of alternatives. Often a category other can be used for alternatives you might have missed. You want to avoid influencing people's response, which can lead to non-sampling error, so you need to word the question as neutrally as possible. You need to be careful if you are asking a question that may be personal or upsetting. As we described in our previous video, it is very important to check your questions with a pilot survey, as this will identify potential problems. The more effort you put into devising the questions, the better quality data you will get.
So how you frame your questions, and we can appreciate communicating with anybody, that sometimes we don't communicate as clearly. Sometimes asking different variations of those questions too will help too. But asking the particular questions, again, it's garbage in, you'll get garbage out. So you really want to formulate that question so you get the content that you're looking for as a derivative from this information. So go out and question people. This is your first opportunity with primary research. Again, start with secondary research. We see statistically that there is this many dog owners in Canada that will use these type of services. There is this many people that reside in the Sarnia-Lambton area, for example. Keep the questionnaire brief. Only ask about 8 to 12 questions. My roommates in Calgary, I think, are still laughing at me because I actually sat on the floor for 2 hours with Statistics Canada once on the phone, answering their various questions, because I will answer questions supporting data. Not everybody is as able and willing to do as I was. So just keep it very simple, and it can be as casual as you'd like it to be. Use a variety of questioning techniques. Keep questions fair and free of bias. Ask the person if they'd use your product or service, point blank. How often would they use it? What would they pay for it? There should be some scenarios where you look at not only competitive pricing strategy, but look at and what the competitors are issuing as their pricing strategies, but what is the customer willing to pay, especially right now? If they do mention that R word, recession, in the next few months, which, by the way, should not discourage any of you. Very, very good, viable businesses started under these economic circumstances. But pricing strategy is one thing that most marketing will yield to, because they do appreciate that during these economic times, people are extra price sensitive. Leon's, for example, is doing a price less. They go on that Leon commercial, and they've already started targeting their commercials saying, hey, we've got cheaper prices, even though that's something they've accentuated all along. They're highlighting that now because their customers right now would respond to it a little bit more. Include other questions that will help you determine how it's best to reach and serve your customers or clients, and be sure to survey a representative of the sample of your target market. So if you've answered these particular questions, which I've already asked you to do from last week, that you've already answered in number 1, for example, some of these, then going back, be sure that reflection is in your target market. It might allude to you, like I did working with that other client that I was working with, that she's like, oh my gosh, I had no idea what my avatar or what my customer profile looked like. And now my marketing initiatives are all wrong. But it gave her that opportunity to get a representative of that sample of the target market and actually cross-reference them to say, hey, am I who you want, basically? So again, these are particular questions you want to refine it as much as possible in these particular scenarios. As a result, you will get raw results that will come from answering these questions. You will get so many people that are of this area. We recently had a client that said, oh, I get so many people from all over Lambton County. Well, great. I can appreciate you probably get this many memberships from Lambton County. However, with that being said, I want to know where they're coming from Lambton County. How many are coming from Grand Bend area? How many are coming from Corunna area, for example? How many are coming from Port Lambton? And break it down into tabulated research. You can get quantitative research, which are very number-driven statistics or data from things like product testing. For example, anyone see the Warby Parker glasses commercials? They show the stress tests that the glasses go through before they'll finally break. It's this many tests that we've done before it'll break. This is product testing. That is quantitative research. Segmentation, where they show so many people are residing in that area that reflect that customer. Customer satisfaction and loyalty. These are why we have things like the Tim Hortons apps and the PC points cards. This is indicative of frequent purchases, and you can get a lot of analysis and data outside of this, like what days of the week are they coming to shop? Are they using certain promotions? Have they responded to certain commercials as a result of this loyalty program? What are they responding to? Do they like a discount, or do they want referrals? Brand image and tracking. The Gerber situation is an example of that. Service evaluation, customer service. Hey, fill out that survey. You can get a free $500 gift card possibly. This criteria and research helps that business. And guys, this research thing isn't a one-time thing. It's constant. It's evolving. The environment's going to continue evolving. Your customer is going to continue evolving. This is something that you might want to revisit every year, or when there has been a significant upheaval like the pandemic and the lockdowns and closures, for example. Customer experience management and their relationship, any professional studies, ad development and concepts, for example. Another African story, their Lactancia, which is based out of Europe, wanted to sell powdered milk in Africa. They wanted to change the packaging that it was offered in. They didn't do enough research to appreciate people weren't just buying the powdered milk. They were actually buying the packaging that it was distributed in. So the packaging that the powdered milk came in was a tin, and they decided to cut costs and not use the aluminum tin, but go to a value pack, as we've seen a lot of manufacturers do to reduce costs and help with the environment. Well, one thing the company didn't appreciate was this tin was being multi-purposed outside of just the product consumption. It was being used to cook things, for example, etc. So customers stopped purchasing it because the packaging actually changed, not just the product inside. So these shopper insights, really important. Qualitative research. So these are subjective criteria, exploratory information on finding probing questions on what the customer looks like, and you're getting more intimate with them and more familiar. Observation, ethnography is very important as well. So using your data or your results from your survey questions, we will then take that information to project potential sales figures that we'll discuss in Module 6. This is the data and the information that will foster into your pro forma income statements and foster into your pro forma balance sheet statements and cash flow statements that are to be submitted along with your business plan. So there are different research approaches depending on the form of business that you have. So this isn't a one size fits all for each of you. If you are looking for a sales and revenue forecast for your statistical analysis, there is an example of what that market potential looks like. I've given you an example of that in your business plan template number 2 that you would have received with the link in the PowerPoint presentation. You then calculate the market share, whether it's a retail, manufacturing, or service firm, and then calculate your net income and cash flow as a result of that. We will spend more time on this, guys, in Module 6, so please do not get overwhelmed. Part of the reason why I'm mentioning Module 6 now is I want you to see where this information feeds into the document later on, and why that some content a stakeholder review here, and they will go and look for that supporting documentation elsewhere. I remember watching a show. Oh, my son and I were just watching. He's going through this phase of the end of the earth and the world ending. So he's 11, had him watch 2012, and then after 2012 decided we were going to go with something more passive and watch The Day After Tomorrow, which is another world-ending film. And the movie scene starts with the son getting scrutinized by his dad as to why he failed his test. And the son says to his dad, well, part of the reason why I failed my test is because I had the answers, but the professor or the teacher didn't appreciate how I came to those answers. The answers were right, but we didn't have the content. We didn't have the supporting evidence and the document as to how you got to those numbers. Guys, you're going to fail your test too if you do not provide this data. We want to see where you've done your research from a secondary and primary perspective and how that feeds into those overall documents at the end. If you're looking to calculate a market potential, this is how you would look at it. You look at your market area and the population and how many of those from last week, those questions that you answered, how many of those individuals are in the Sarnia-Lambton area or in your geographical trading area. Then this should be able to feed into revenue statistics for the potential of what you could potentially see in year 1 and year 2 and year 5. Step 2 of that for a retail firm is to take that amount of selling space, if you have a brick and mortar store devoted to the merchandise, and how much of that percentage will be selling space. Now, in just-in-time supply chains nowadays, you're not seeing a lot of retail establishments that have a lot of real estate within their business dedicated to storage and warehousing. So this is one of those things that will determine whether you're using your area space effectively too. Make adjustments to reflect any competitor strengths and weaknesses so we can appreciate why. A SWOT analysis of each competitor is very important. And I've seen these business plans where they're like, okay, I see that here's a list of competitors. Well, great. You've acknowledged your competition, but I don't know why they're a competition. We need to know more. So you need to do a SWOT analysis, and that will reflect elsewhere in the business plan as well, not just your competitive analysis, to see if or not you are meeting these objectives for your strategic plan for your business. You then multiply the revised market share percentage by market potential estimate. Now, one adjustment that needs to be made for this particular area as well is we have to be cognizant of cross-border shoppers. So in some dynamics, depending on your business and depending on what area you're in, yes, you have to consider people going across the border and purchasing that. But my grandparents live in the States. I can tell you right now, pricing strategies are awful on top of the currency exchange rate on top of that. So I don't think you might see as many Canadians going over there to shop, but you might want to reflect Americans coming over here and maximizing their dollars to shop. So you're not going to know who those individuals are because you're not going to Port Huron, for example, and doing market research, but you might want to ask your customers as they're coming across your desk, where did you come from? And how did you hear about us? If it is a manufacturing firm, and we have had these in the past, last year we had a contestant, for example, that was making homemade candles and bath balms and bubble baths and stuff like that. So this would be a particular scenario where you would use this calculation of market share for a marketing firm. So you estimate the total productive capacity or the output. That could be in dollars. That could even be in widgets that you want to output, or numbers of products that you output or you intend to manufacture. You estimate that total productivity of the manufacturing plant, and you establish that by what your percentage of market share is by dividing over the total production capacity. You make adjustments again to reflect the competition and what's out there. If you have no competitors, that's great. You almost have effectively what could appear to be a monopoly, or you're a first mover in the market. You might not need to make any adjustments. And then establish that market share percentage that you obtained in step one. If you were a service facility, so a hairdresser, for example, you can, or a dog groomer, estimate the total capacity of the service available in the market area. Estimate the service capacity of the proposed business, and then you can calculate that market share based on that service capacity. Make adjustments, and then you have a market share percentage estimated from step one. After you have those assessments, the next step is taking this information for step three. You are not doing this yet. You are going to save this information for week 6 when you start doing your pro forma income statements and cash flow statements. So you will start doing some analysis. If you have a particular location in mind, start asking them, start asking the landlord, start asking other tenants. How much are you paying in hydro? How much are you paying in water? How much are you paying in taxes? That sort of thing. What is the mortgage? As you get information and quotes, what does the insurance rates look like? Once you have established your marketing strategy, how much is it going to cost? You can start formulating all that information for module 6. Right now, I just want you to establish how many of your clients, based on your avatar or your profile that you created, how many of those clients are there. We will take all the other information like the expenses and that sort of information and focus it on week 6. We also will look at cost of goods sold and gross profit percentages. Again, these are all terms that some of us are allergic to because they'd rather give it to the accountant to worry about. This is all very, viable and important information that you should have and know and be familiar with on your own. I don't know how many times we have people that do not take the accounting aspects very seriously, and they feel confident their accountant or bookkeeper is keeping their best interests in mind, and they have not. We hear it a lot. Become familiar with the unfamiliar when it comes to accounting. But again, we're not going to establish those right now. We're going to wait for that in the future. With quantitative assessments of your business opportunities, you want to create financials, which is a best case and expected and worst case scenarios based on the first year, the second year, and well, usually the first 2 years is all that is needed, depending on what level of business plan is required. If you have long-term objectives that you're looking for investments for in the future, then you want to give your year 5 as well. So you want to do the best, the expected, and worst case, and then you'll start applying actuals and what was actually spent. So actuals, there's a 4th category here, and see where it falls. Does it fall in your best case scenario? Does it fall in your expected scenario? Does it fall in your worst case scenario? And guys, each of these levels, best case scenario, don't just run to the bank and cash in and say, woohoo, this is great. No. Best case scenario, you're still asking critical and analytical questions. What worked really well here? We're going to keep doing this. Okay. Worst case, what didn't work well? Where can we change? Did the competition do something that responded very well? Is there something that we can do, for example? Earlier, you want to see if the idea is original or not. You want to see if the business name is available. You do not want to get a cease and desist letter. If it's a strong corporation with deep pockets, they will not hesitate to throw their legal dogs on you. No, you cannot use that. It can be as simple as doing a Google search, or you can pay, it's approximately $15 for what we call a nuance report. A nuance report is part of a corporate registration. So if you are looking to do a corporate registration with a lawyer, this is part of that package that you're purchasing. It just essentially makes sure that that trademark or that name is effectively available and not similar to somebody else. And it's very important to, like I mentioned too, see if the domain name is available as well. Trademark legislation in Canada, just to let you know, if you see a TM, that means there is a trademark that has surfaced and originated, it is protected. If you see an R with a circle around it, it means that trademark is registered. They're both naughty, you should stay away from both. What does the difference mean between the two? TM means that it's unregistered. It means it still is available and will be protected, and that you could be sued and get to be stopped and could be committing what we call in the legal environment the tort of passing off. You cannot sue for damages if it is not registered. If it is registered, then you can sue for damages and get the offending party to stop. So that's the difference between registering your trademark and not. Is it mandatory in Canada? Patents are mandatory registration. Industrial designs are mandatory registration. Trademarks are not mandatory registration unless you are doing business outside of the domestic geographical area of Canada. The second you go importing and exporting outside of the Canada geographical area, you now need to mandatorily register your trademark. Copyrights, again, are not mandatory registration. However, you can sue for damages if they're registered. Business confidential information is another sensitive data for a business. It is not registerable. In order to search to see if a patent is available, you can do a database search. Again, a lawyer will appropriately do that on your behalf. You can also search primarily through Google or social media. You can check stores or catalogs, trade associations, trade publications, or go to trade shows and talk to others in the industry. I have a client currently that is working on a biological project locally, and they have participated in just about every livestock show or trade show, agricultural show that they can participate in to gather as much primary research on their own for their business. and talk to others in the industry, especially non-competing businesses that might support and help you, and search other business and popular media publications. Research the competition is another big one. Are they selling similar products or services in your trade area, and determine what that exact number is. Consider various levels of competition. Those are who exactly are like you, and some that might offer part of what you offer or a sample of it, or something that's similar to what you offer, and those that sell something completely, entirely different from what you are offering, but they have the market share that you're hoping to gain. So you want to look at the competitors directly and indirectly as well. So are you aware of the competition in your area? So you want to determine what that exact number of these are in your geographical trading area. Direct competition is another business that offers the same concept or solution that fulfills exactly what your customer base is, your customer profile is looking for, just as the business does within the same target market. So for example, two pizza places in the same area, they're both offering pizzas, they're both offering directly competitive to each other. Indirect competition is another business that offers something different or a different solution to the same target market. So an example of this is another restaurant, a super sandwich place that is located in close proximity to a pizza place. So you can understand who's your direct competition, who's your indirect competition, and you want to get some information about each and every one of these individuals as well. You want to indicate the number of competition. And again, secondary data is where you want to look for this to see who's coming on into the area and who's not, and be able to explain why and how you plan on competing with your competitors. What will make your business different or more desirable? And the one way to do this is performing a SWOT analysis on each and every one of those competitors. And this is where a chart is a brilliant highlight of quickly reducing the information, the content, to compare and contrast for the reader of your competitive analysis on this is the competition, and have common criteria that you are comparing and contrasting between each one. Let's take a look at what a SWOT analysis is.
Hi, I'm Erica Olson. Today's whiteboard session is on putting together a SWOT analysis for your organization. SWOT simply stands for strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. And the purpose of a SWOT analysis is to create a synthesized view of your current state. And great planning, whether strategic planning, marketing planning, operational planning, you name it, great planning starts with an understanding of where you are today, confronting the brutal facts, as Jim Collins says, so you can build a future. And a SWOT analysis is a great way to capture and frame up what your current state is. So I'm going to talk to you about what it is in a little more detail, how to put it together, and then quickly how to put it to use. Let's jump in. Strengths. We build on our strengths. Weaknesses, we shore them up. The right-hand side of your 2x2 matrix, which is your SWOT, is your internal perspective. On the other side, we have our opportunities, which we invest or capitalize in, and our threats, which we monitor. External perspective. Tip number one, do not confuse your internal and external perspective. We're looking for a holistic view of your organization, and it's important to be really clear about what we can impact and directly influence, internal, and what we can influence but not directly impact, external. And I'll talk more about that in just a minute. So this is the structure for your SWOT. When you're done with it, you'll have maybe 10 to 15 bullet points in each of the 4 quadrants. So how do you figure out what goes in those quadrants? The simple thing to do is to hop into a room with a whiteboard and brainstorm with your planning team and fill out your SWOT. Taking it to the next level is bringing data into your SWOT analysis. There's tons of data in organizations. Absolutely go pull in some data so you have more of a data-based view of what's going on. Let's talk about those data sources. Internal. Get perspective from executive board, if you have them, partners, vendors. Gather that through one-on-one interviews. Employees. Employee perspective is super important to help understand what's working and what's not working. Customers, same thing. You cannot have a great SWOT analysis without understanding what your customers are saying about what you're doing well and what you're not doing well. And last, but certainly not least, pull in some of your key performance indicators, or very simply, your current performance over the last year, 3 years, 5 years, whatever makes the most sense. If you're a little pressed for time, make sure you pull in your employee perspective and your customer perspective. On the external side, same thing. What are your information sources? I like to think about external data kind of in concentric circles, starting from the outside. Mega trends. Those are those really big things that are impacting most all organizations across our country or potentially across the globe. Aging baby boomers, growth of millennials, that type of thing. Industry. So your industry has tons of information. There's tons of information from industry associations, and industries have all kinds of trends that impact organizations. So check out your industry association for reports on potential opportunities, threats, and trends in your area. Coming in a little bit closer, your market. The market comes in two flavors: your geographic market that you serve, or your target markets that you're serving. Data sources include your economic development organization for current market information, and then Census Bureau for target market type information. Competitors, everybody has competitors. Understand what your top 3 competitors are doing. Super important to have a holistic view of your external perspective. Same thing, if you're pressed for time, make sure you get industry information and make sure you bring competitive information into your SWOT. If you have a little bit of budget, you can buy reports that will make this that much richer and that much more data-based. If you don't, go with the ideas that I already shared with you. Great, so you have all this information, what do you do with it? Synthesize it into 10 to 15 themes, like I mentioned before, group them up, sub-bullet point them, that type of thing, such that you have a pretty well-rounded SWOT. It's nice for it to fit on one page. Like I said, you want to be able to see your current state, one page, 11-point font, not 7, so dial it down. There's always more weaknesses than there are threats, so take that as a rule of thumb, but doesn't have to be perfect. Here's tip number 2. Do not confuse weaknesses and opportunities, and this happens all the time. And when that happens, your SWOT falls apart. Let me explain why with an example. One theme that might come out of your work is improving communications. Improving communication sounds like an opportunity, right? But it's not, because our external perspective is things we can influence but don't directly control, and we control communication. It's more like a weakness, but it's not phrased like a weakness. So it needs to live in this quadrant, and if you have a lot of things like that, you might consider renaming this quadrant areas of improvement. And if you do that, then just make sure that all the bullet points in this area are phrased that same way: improve communications. If you want to keep it as weakness, change it to lack of communication, and then you have a statement that sounds like a weakness. So why is this important? When you process out your SWOT, and we have a whole video on that, so go check that out, but really quickly, when you process out your SWOT, you're going to want to start with opportunities, and this is your growth area. Planning is about growth. If you have stuff in here that isn't about growth, the SWOT doesn't work. So, opportunities are growth goals. That's what you do with those. Threats, most of the time you don't turn into goals, you merely watch them. Maybe an initiative or two, but most of the time you're watching them. Under/over weaknesses, these are going to turn into your operational and people goals and initiatives. And last, but certainly not least, your strengths are a source of your competitive advantage, or a starting point to identify them. We have a whole video on that, so check that out to identify your competitive advantages.
So you can see where a SWOT analysis is very important, and we kind of touch on the competition today. Like, we looked at our market description and what was happening in our own environment with our own customers and what our profile looked like in the research. But now we're starting to look outside of our business. We're starting to look at the competition. Next week, we're going to looking at the other dynamics. You're going to do a SWOT analysis for each and every one of these elements. The competition, again, keep your friends closer, your enemies closer. And I like I said, I do believe there's more than enough to go around, but what is the kind of criteria that we're going to be looking for as a result of competitive analysis? Well, let's take a look. We want to name of the competitor and all the contact information associated with that. What is the age of their business? What is their form of ownership? If there is an Inc. Limited or holdings, for example, or corp, it is set up as a corporation. This also gives you some idea too of how you should set up your own business form of ownership. If the competition in the other industry, for example, is registering as corporations, then there's a reason why they're doing that. There's a liability attachment to that, and you should probably follow suit as well. If most of your businesses are doing a sole proprietorship in that industry, then great, do it as a sole proprietorship. Now remember, if you are a sole proprietorship, if you're registering your business in your own name, you do not necessarily need to register it, but if it is mutually exclusive to your own personal name, you do need to see if that is available. You want to look at pricing strategies your competition might have for similar products. How many employees do they have? Do they retain their employees for very long, or do they see a lot of turnover? What is the major strengths and weaknesses of the organization? The strengths shows their value proposition. The weaknesses shows the potential for your value proposition, which is why we do this investigative report about what your competition effectively looks like. So this will also help create some creative juices in your head. What is your competitive advantage? What holds you and sets you above the rest? This is when your business has a product or service that creates an opportunity that leads to the anticipation or appears better than the competitors. So what makes you stand above the rest? It's an advantage in the right industry, the right business, or the right part of the business to focus on. So how can you develop your own competitive advantage?
Create your competitive advantage. Warren Buffett has been fairly successful in picking winners, and he says the key to investing is not assessing how much an industry is going to affect society or how much it will grow, but rather determining the competitive advantage of any given company and, above all, the durability of that advantage. The term competitive advantage refers to a unique advantage a company has over companies offering similar goods or services. Allow it to generate higher sales volumes or attract more customers. Jim Collins, in his book, From Good to Great, asks these 3 questions to unravel your competitive advantage. 1. What can your business be the first at? 2. What is that unique thing only your business can offer? 3. What can your business be the best at? Any one of the above will give you an idea of your competitive advantage. Once you can identify it, you must be able to communicate it to your employees and your customers. Here are 3 steps that will help you discover your competitive advantage. Step 1. Make a brag list. This means you make a list of the big fat claims you make through your marketing messages, advertisements, or sales pitches. Here is where a true in-depth understanding of your business process is important, as you compile the list of all key activities that your business is really good at. Brainstorm as many as possible in a single list down the page. For example, you might make claims like, we have overnight shipping like Amazon Prime. We have highly skilled service staff with a decade of experience behind them. We have excellent customer reviews online. Our pricing is very attractive. Once you have made this list, we move on to the next step. Step 2. List those things that your competitors do really well. To differentiate yourself from the competition, you must understand the strengths and weaknesses of your competition. Review your competitors and make a list of all the things they do really well. Now, as you build the list, you may also notice some commonality in claims that your competition might also do well, just as you do. After building the list, cross any activity that you and your competitors do well. This does not mean that you stop doing them, but to get an idea that it can't be your exclusive claims anymore. As you cross out, see if there is something left out, and the claim can be only yours. Step 3. Create a fresh list of claims. You might have got something from the second step. If not, make a fresh list of those things only your company can do exceptionally well. You can also interact with your customers and find out why they choose you over your competition. This might lead to big revelations of something you might not have thought before. At the end of this stage, you should only be left with 2 to 3 possible competitive advantage and choose the best one from them. You can consider the following reasons to choose your real competitive advantage. Cross out any that can easily be copied by a competitor or new entry to the industry. Cross out any that cannot be marketed or advertised. Cross out any if the advantage could be turned against you by a competitor. The activity that you do really well, that the competitor is not good at, and is valued by your customers becomes your competitive advantage. Once you have selected your competitive advantage, make sure that you quantify them. For example, instead of claiming faster service, say you have 1 hour response time that is 5 times faster than your immediate competitor. Instead of saying only customer satisfaction, quantify it with specifications like, we have 98.8% customer satisfaction rating, which is the highest in the industry. Make sure that your unique claims are backed by quantifiable data in order to call them your competitive advantage. And remember, your competitive advantage comes from what your people do and not from what they know. Performance and result is the key to measure your competitive advantage. Always remember that most advantages can be duplicated within a period of time. Approximately 70% of all new products can be duplicated within 1 year, and 60 to 90% of process improvements eventually spread to your competitors. Competitive advantage is a dynamic process that demands constant attention. If you want to make your competitive advantage sustainable, make sure you keep refining them from time to time.
Why you want to keep going back to this document and revisiting what the research says and whether you're hitting those targets or not, above and beyond just your customer profile, but what your customer looks like or your competitor looks like, and be able to respond to them accordingly. And again, these tasks don't necessarily mean this happens. It just means that you're proactively going to be able to respond to them, and it's much more cost effective and efficient to do that proactively versus reactively. And we're going to be looking at other dynamics. This is our, like I said, our first insight on looking outside of your business and how you should be responding accordingly to it. That is the session for this evening.